Hey, what is up guys? Today we actually do the spawn tower, so we implement the spawn tower, finally. We also implement multiple type of turrets, so in the next episode we should be able to produce another kind of tower, so something else than the arrow tower, and we should also be able to spawn it. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to go back inside the build mode script, and we're gonna work our way towards making this tower spawnable. Alright, so first step is I've decided we're actually going to add some field to the tower info already, so we're gonna keep a reference to the very tower game object. So go ahead and declare a public game object, tower object up here. It might get useful, it might become useful actually a little bit later on, so I'm just gonna make sure that we put it there, that we reference it when we spawn, and we will probably end up using it at one point. So same thing down here, we're actually going to have a reference to the tower object as well, so the component base tower. Let's make this a public base tower that we're simply going to call tower. Again, set get properties, and yeah, so we should be ready. We should be ready to move on to the actual spawn function. Okay. But again, before we do that, we need to know which tower are we going to spawn, because right now we only have a single tower, we only have the arrow tower, but next episode we're going to add, say, a shock tower, which is going to do some AoE around us or something like that. But it's just to show that we can have multiple tower we can spawn. Now, in order to know which one we are going to spawn, we're going to keep track of a int, so private int selected tower index. We're going to start with 0, of course. Unless you want to put it on 1, and 1 is your second tower, depending on which one you want to point at when you start the game. And below that, I'm going to add another reference of the tower info. So declare yourself a private tower info, which is this structure over here. And this one is going to be the focus tower spawn. Okay. So basically this is going to be a reference to the little cyan square, cyan plane object that we are currently looking at when we're moving around in the map and we are snapping. So when we snap to one of the tower spawn, we're going to turn that field over here, the focus tower spawn, to that very cyan square. Okay, let's go a little bit down here. Do we need to do anything here? I'm not sure. Oh yeah, since we have values now for which of the tower we spawn, we're actually going to replace our spawn preview here. So spawn preview is equal to instantiate. We used to instantiate the first one in the list. Now we're going to instantiate the first one in the list still, but we're going to use the selected tower index instead. And then after that, we need to actually create a new function. So we're going to create another function that is going to be called every single time we change the selection of the towers. So say, okay, so the preview right now is arrow tower, and then I click on the key, it moves on the list, and now it's the shock tower. So instead of showing me the arrow tower in front of me, it's going to show the shock tower. So we are going to declare ourselves, actually I'm just going to write it here. So on selection change is going to be the function I call every time I switch selection. So I'm going to take this, copy it, and then go down, say, yeah, just over here. So this is going to be a private void on selection change, and this is a function we're going to call every single time we change the selection. Now, when we change the selection, what do we need to do exactly? We need to make sure that, well, first, the previous object is no longer there. So we're going to do destroy spawn preview. Now just imagine yourself that we have the arrow tower selected and we're moving on to the shock tower. The arrow tower is being destroyed, and then after that we need to spawn the new tower. So spawn preview is going to equal instantiate. We're going to instantiate the tower prefab at the index selected tower index as game object. Now that we have our new tower, we also need to do a spawn preview.getComponent. So we're getting the component base tower, and we're gonna do dot enable is equal to false. So we're turning off the shooting mechanic of that tower. So this is only for the preview. Just remember, this is for the preview, so when we do the on selection change, it's going to delete the previous one, and it is going to delete the previous one, and it's going to actually turn off the shooting. And also let's turn off the collider as well. So spawn preview get component of type collider dot enabled is also equal to false. Okay, now we can actually go back up here and remove these line of code. Actually, I think we can remove all of these and simply write on selection change. Okay, so let's just look real quick. Let's try to go in game, see what happens now. So I'm pressing R. It created myself the first tower, and if you can see over here, the box collider is off and the arrow tower is also off. If I press K to start a wave, it still snaps, but it's no longer shooting at the enemies, and it's no longer blocking their collision. So we just fix our preview. That's a good first step. But what we want to do in this video is actually spawn the tower, so let's keep going. Alright, so now to call this function outside of the start, we're actually going to need to keep track of the input of the player. So in the pool input, I'll go down here in the pool input function, and below this, what is this already? This is the, so this is the activate, and pretty much the activate build mode. Below this, we're gonna do change tower selection. And so when we want to change the tower selection, we'll say, are you active right now? So if the build mode is active, then we are going to look for keys. So if we're pressing the key, if input.get key down, say key code Q. So to switch selection, I'm going to be using Q and E, which you know, the keys right next to the WASD. And then after that, when I press Q, I'm going to look, is the selected tower index above 0? If that's the case, then we can go ahead and increment that selected tower index. And the reason I do this, and I'll explain to you in a second, actually let's do minus minus. So selected tower index minus minus, and then we're going to call on selection change. Okay, so if the selected tower index is above 0, then we can do minus minus, and then we're going to call on selection change. Now if it was 0, if we did minus minus on that and it was 0, then we would end up at the index minus 1, which would return us a error and would pretty much just crash our game and our mechanic. So we're going to make sure that we have a valid index for this. Okay, now same thing, we're going to do it, but the other way around. So when we press E, so right below that, we're going to do input get key down key code E, and this is going to increment our selected tower index. So selected tower index plus plus. Now as for the check, it's going to be a little bit different because we have to check if we're still in the index range, but on the other side. So basically, if selected tower index is smaller than tower prefab dot count, then we're going to do -1. The reason we do -1 is because this list, not the list, but this count function is not 0 base, but our list is. So in our list, if we have two index, it would look like index 0 and index 1, but our count returns 2. So we're going to make sure that we do a -1 on that, and that should be it. We should be good to go. Let's try it out in game actually. Now we don't have many towers, we only have one tower, but what we'll do is we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to go on the level manager. So the tower prefab size is going to be 2. And let's just add another instance of the same tower. So arrow tower at the index 0 and arrow tower at the index 1. Now if we press play, we spawn the tower, and we press E, and we keep pressing E to make sure it doesn't go out of bound of the index. It should actually do something. In order to check if it actually does something, you're gonna go ahead and select this very object. And if the selection drops when we press E or Q, that means this object was deleted and then it created a new one. So I'm gonna press E. And as you can see, the selection was dropped, so the object I had previously was deleted. And now we make sure that, okay, the box collider is off, and also the tower object is also off. So our mechanic is working, however, we don't have any real way to look at it because we don't have many towers. Okay, but it's a good thing, now this is working, we are ready to spawn this very tower. So if we go somewhere in our code, say right here, right below the update, we can do a private void spawn tower, and this is going to be this is finally going to be the spawn tower function. Okay, so when we spawn our tower, what we need to do actually, we need to check, are you currently focusing any of those predefined area, any of those cyan square? So we'll do if, oops, I'm gonna do it in the function. So if focus tower spawn is equal to null, not Microsoft, null, then we'll simply return, because we're not looking at anything, we're not snapping with any predefined area. So let's just go ahead and return this. Of course, a little bit later on we can add a line over here that says that draws some text in the screen that says you're not actually allowed to place a tower here or something of the sort. But that's going to come a little bit later on when we do more UI stuff. Okay, and now after that, when we say we do have a focus tower spawn, then we can do if focus tower spawn dot is occupied. Is there a tower currently sitting on top of where you are right now? If that is true, then again we do return. We cannot spawn a tower here because it's already occupied. Alright, now another check we have to do is if we have enough mana, or if we have enough resources to spawn that turret. We currently don't manage resources yet, so we're just going to leave it in comment. Okay, then after that, that's pretty much it. So we did all the checks and we are now ready to spawn the tower. So let's do focus tower spawn dot tower object is going to equal instantiate, and then we instantiate our tower. So tower prefab at the index selected tower index, and we spawn it at the position focus tower spawn dot position. And as for the rotation, let's just leave it on quaternion dot identity for now. Also, since we assign directly the tower object, the game object of the focus spawn over here, we gotta make sure that we cast it as a game object. So right after your line, we're gonna do as a game object. Alright, so now we should have a tower spawned on our cyan object when we call this function. But after that, we need to make sure that we cannot spawn another tower on top of that. So we're going to do focus tower spawn dot is occupied is now equal to true. And since we're at it, we're also going to set the tower component of that. So focus tower spawn dot tower is going to equal this object, the one we just created, dot get component. Actually, can we simply do get component like that? Nope, never mind. Okay, so focus tower spawn dot tower object dot get component, and we're gonna get the base tower. I can't write today. Base tower component. Okay, and that should be it for our tower spawn. Okay, now we got to put it somewhere. So in our pool input, where we actually look for the input, we're gonna go below our selection. So we did the activate disactivate build mode. This is to change the selection, and now we're gonna do spawn the tower. Again, if you are active right now, so if is active, then we're going to look for inputs. So if input dot get key down. Like I said, I just want to mention it again. All the inputs, we're going to change them in a really, really near future. We're going to have some kind of input manager that takes string keyword instead. So if your input are a little bit messy right now, don't worry about it, because we're gonna go through them all once more in a short moment. Actually, in maybe like few episodes, and then we're gonna also plug in your Windows controller if you have any, or your Xbox controller or your PS3. We're gonna be able to control our game using these input as well. Okay. Now, yeah, so inside of there, we're actually going to simply call spawn tower. So if you are active, then if you're pressing F, we're simply going to spawn the tower. And then in the spawn tower, it's going to look, okay, are you ready to spawn this? Do you have what it takes? Do you have a focus spawn focus right now? And are you currently occupied? And it just hit me right now. We never actually assigned this value. So we need to go back inside our, where is it? The move spawn preview. When we move this around here, we need to actually keep track of this object. So this object over here, like I said last episode, this is the cyan square object. We actually look for the object, and this is it. This is the tower spawn dot find, and it finds the exact object we're looking at and we're snapping to. So we're actually going to say focus tower spawn is equal. We're going to take this whole line. Forget about the position, we don't need it. So take this whole line and let's put it inside of this value. And then for the preview position, we're simply going to say focus tower spawn dot position. Now we also need a way to drop this value whenever we exit this snapping. Or I mean, when we stop snapping to this very object, we need to set it to null. So down here, I'm also going to write a else statement. And let's try this. My else statement down here, I'm going to write focus tower spawn is simply equal to null. So if you remember, this is the if there is no cyan square close to us, if there is no predefined area where it can spawn next to where we're actually calculating our spawn preview at, then we can simply say if there is none, set that to null, and we're not allowed to spawn anymore. Okay, so that was a lot of code. Let's try this out in game, and hopefully everything works in a single try. So we're spawning this first turret. I'm actually going to select it, press E, changing my selection, and now we're gonna snap. Snapping works fine still. We haven't broken anything. And now let's try to press F. And it just duplicated my tower. Now we still have the little glitch where it's not at the right place, but yeah, let's try to press F again on this very object. And right now I'm pressing F. As you can see, nothing spawns in my hierarchy over here, so there's no tower on top of that that's being spawned. Let's just make sure by moving it around. Nope, so there's nothing. And let's try to spawn it somewhere else. Pressing F, 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 and as you can see, we're pretty much just spawning turrets now. I'm pressing R again to close my build mode. And let's press play on this, and now our game is way too easy. Hey, but at least it works. Now we're actually going to go and fix this little bug as well. We're going to go exactly, where can we go? We spawn it in the spawn tower function. So in our spawn tower function, we spawn it at this very position here. So focus spawn dot position. And since this function is taking a vector3 as a position here, we cannot simply say .y plus 1. So instead we're going to do plus vector3 dot up. As you can see over here, vector3 dot up is basically the same exact thing as doing plus 1 in y. If you look here, this is the shorthand for writing vector3 0 1 0. So literally the same thing we did before. I'm also going to leave a comment here, so I'm going to press tab a little bit, and we're going to say temporary fix, just so when we look back at our code a little bit later on, when we're removing these, we actually know where they are. Okay, let's go back in game, try this out, just to make sure everything works. Actually, you know what, I'm going to duplicate some spawn containers. So all these tower spawn, copy these, move them over there, press play, and spawn some turrets. And as you can see now, it's working just fine. I'm gonna spawn these. Also, don't worry about this error. I know we've been getting it for a moment now, but we're gonna start fixing those in a few episodes. So I'm pressing K, and now I can simply look at my level being cleared super easily, actually. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode, guys. Next one, we're actually going to create the shock tower. So we're gonna add a new tower. On top of that, we're also going to add a little piece of UI so we can, oh, so I don't have any towers in the middle. I'm gonna lose. Yeah, so we're gonna add some piece of UI so we can actually visualize which tower we are selecting with buttons. So it's going to be similar to the action bar, but instead of having the buttons at the bottom of the screen, when we are in build mode, we're gonna have some kind of action bar in the middle of the screen that's going to show right now you're on the arrow tower, and if you press E to move ahead once in the the selected tower index, then this is the shock tower. So some kind of visualization like that, and we're gonna spawn the other tower if we have the other tower selected. So guys, thanks again for watching. If you have any question or comment, please leave them in the comment section below. Also, if you learned something or you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, it really helps me out, and also subscribe for more tutorials like these. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.